Welcome to Eye on the Illini. This is Mike Cagley. We are working from a damaged computer here post game. For those of you who can't see it, it's no big deal. Looks a little funky for those of you who can. Matt and I are here post game after Illinois defeated the Michigan Wolverines with a really a physical 21-7 beating. And for once, Illinois was never really they were in control the whole game. Now there was a couple times they could have broke it wide open, but this was a fairly one-sided affair, regardless of the yardage. When a lot of it was Illinois bending but not breaking, as Michigan took the ball and tried to make it close late. Matt, your thoughts?
The University of Illinois lined up and whipped Michigan, and I didn't know after last week or any other week that was going to be possible. But Illinois lined up and beat one of the more physically dominating programs in the Big Ten Conference and did it in a way, Mike, that you felt like, Illinois, that a Brett, you talk to guys that are here nationally this week because it's a CBS game. It's a big time game. The press box was full, just like the stadium today. A bunch of national people were here that were saying to me, this feels like a Brett Bielema line of scrimmage win. This feels like when Brett Bielema was back in Wisconsin and he was winning Big Ten titles. And he was going to Rose Bowls. We're going to run the football. We're going to play defense. We're going to do the three things that Brett Bielema says win football games: run the ball, stop the run. And for a certain extent, if you're Michigan, they did stop the run. They did not have a 100-yard rusher. Donovan Edwards did not have a good game today. They did number two and then cover kicks. Well, part of that is special teams. Well, they had a big fake punt that allowed them to continue a drive to get points. They won special teams. They won the line of scrimmage. They won the run game, in my opinion. I don't know if the stats bear out exactly like that because I know Michigan had a decent amount of run yards. But I think Illinois won the line of scrimmage on both sides of the ball. I thought offensively and defensively up front, Illinois did exactly what they needed to do to win a football game like this. And I was really, really impressed that Brett Bielema's plan came to fruition against one of the bullies of the Big Ten. And I think that everybody at Illinois who follows this program, goes on our message boards and does whatever it is that you do on our message boards, I think we ought to start figuring out now that Brett Bielema knows what he's doing, because this was a planned execution of Illinois' big people being better than Michigan's big people. And for 60 minutes in Champaign-Urbana, it happened on national television. And I give all of this staff and all of these players at Illinois a whole lot of credit for being able to walk into a game like this when everybody told them that Michigan was more physical and Michigan was more punishing and Michigan was going to run the ball better and Michigan did all of the fundamental things. And Michigan has better athletes and Michigan has better big people and more highly recruited big people. I thought Illinois did a really, really good job of staying to the game plan and trusting their guys, their core guys, to get them through a ball game like this. And I just thought it was a complete and total domination at the line of scrimmage. And Illinois deserves a lot of credit for being able to take one of the bullies of the Big Ten and take him out back and beat the hell out of him. Just like Brett Bielema has trained this team to do since the beginning of, I'll even say it, the beginning of spring ball, because I could go back to August 1st, but I could also go back to spring ball. Brett Bielema said it in the press conference, Mike. You don't beat Michigan in 1 week. You beat Michigan prepping to beat Michigan 365 days a year. And Illinois has kind of done that, because you could see in the spring that they were starting to get confident. And you could see in the fall camp that they were starting to get confident in what they were doing. And today it just all kind of came into fruition. And Illinois, this is going to be the game plan going forward for Illinois to win football games like this, even in 2024, where everybody likes to throw it all over the parking lot. Illinois is going to do it in a way that is just physically dominating. And I think it also ends the narrative today, Mike, that Illinois can't beat a Michigan by being physically dominating. That ends that narrative today. Brett Bielema has ended that. If I take my guys and my developmental guys and they're just better than Michigan's big people, we can win. And that's what happened today.
Yeah, it was an interesting game for those of you who are the stat hounds. Michigan actually outgained Illinois 322 to 267 and had a passing advantage of 208 to 80, but the passing yards were largely irrelevant. From a rushing standpoint, Illinois was in advantage with 187 yards to 114. Penalties were relatively similar. First downs were 20 to Michigan, 18 for Illinois. So when you looked at it, Illinois, ran 57 plays and Michigan ran 70. The average yards per play was essentially equal. So it really came down to the fact that Illinois got some timely sacks and their pass rush was there. They turned over Michigan 3 times to 0. There's one of your huge reasons for the win. And in the red zone, Illinois was 3 for 4. Michigan was 1 for 3. When you put the turnovers with the red zone performance and the fact that Illinois had 5 sacks to 1 for Michigan, that really were the difference points for this game. Illinois ran the ball for 4.9 yards a carry, so they definitely were able to keep pressure on the Michigan defense. And look, for somebody who, when Brett Bielema was originally announced as coach, I wasn't that excited. As you look at what he's done to build this program, as you looked at how Illinois is playing right now and what he is building with, 5 and 7 seasons instead of the typical new Illinois coach who wins 1 or 2 games, going 8 and 5 one year, now at 6 and 1, has an opportunity to finish out. Has a Herculean task next week to play Oregon, but you never count a Brett Bielema team out. It is really a turnaround that nationally, as we talk to different people across the country, they are very impressed with where he is taking this program. And I think that is a huge difference to what we can say. Folks, really, the last time we thought the program was going in the right direction was under John Makovic, and before him, for a time, Mike White. And now you're talking over 30 years ago. This is quite a turnaround. To go back into this game, I thought Gabe Yakas played a heck of a game, really kind of proved his worth. And I thought the Illinois defense, when they really needed to, were able to get the pass rush and they were able to get the turnover.
Yeah, I mean, Mike, you want to talk numbers? Let's talk what the numbers were through 3 quarters, because the score was the same at the end of the third quarter as it was at the end of the fourth quarter. It was 21-7, right? Illinois had more total yards. Illinois had more rushing yards by 50. Michigan had 10 more passing yards than Illinois. Michigan had twice as many penalties as Illinois. They ran both teams ran the exact amount of plays. Illinois had 172 yards rushing at the end of the third quarter. I looked at you and I said, that's the most yards that Michigan's given up in 2 years. After 45 minutes of play, we still had 15 minutes left, and Illinois had already gotten on the ground more than anybody else on Michigan in the last 2 years. This is where this game was won, because those passing yards that Jack Tuttle totaled up, the 129 of them in the fourth quarter, were completely irrelevant. And that is what happens. That is what happens when a team gets behind, is that they have to try to throw themselves back into a comeback. Illinois doesn't play that way under Brett Bielema. They physically dominate you, and then they're the ones that are bullying you in the fourth quarter. And look, I just think Illinois through 3 quarters just played about as the most Brett Bielema type game that I've seen in a long, long time. Those guys deserve a lot of credit. I'm going to tell you one more thing, Mike. You mentioned Gabe Yakas, NFL. That kid is going to play on Sunday. I don't, there are NFL guys that walk through Champaign-Urbana every week to practice. They look at him and they go, my God, that looks like a guy who could play in the Pro Bowl when he's 25, 26, 27 years old. He has all the tools and all the talent. And 2 things about the defense. One is that I feel like I have been very, very, I've been very, very hard on Terrence Jamison and just the amount of players that he's been able to recruit into the program, the clay that he has to work with, because I think Terrence Jamison is one of the best developers of talent, not only in the Big Ten, but maybe in the country at his position, defensive line. And that is a hugely important position to have at the power conference level. I've been very, very hard on Illinois' inability to go get 4- and 5-star defensive linemen that can make life a lot easier for this program. But with what Jamison has to work with, okay, I thought this defensive line as a collective unit today, we're talking Gabe Yakas, I'm talking T. Rye Edwards, who also is going to get a look, even though he's kind of small. He's going to get a look on Sundays too. NFL people are going to look at him too. But they played so many defensive linemen today. There were hockey substitutions that Illinois was doing on the defensive line, and Jamie was doing all day long just to try to break the momentum of Michigan. Your Alex Brays, your Jeremiah Warrens, even Anise Sledge got in the transfer from Auburn. I thought the defensive line as a collective unit played about as well as they've ever played all year. And that is a group that has been, knocked by people like me. And I feel like they really nutted up today and really played their best game, and is a major reason why Illinois was able to win this game. Michigan ended the third quarter with 122 rushing yards. That is not enough for this Michigan offense to actually win a football game against a quality opponent like Illinois. They need to be at the 200-yard mark with through 45 minutes with 15 minutes left to go. Illinois was not going to let this happen. The second point I quickly want to make is I want to give Aaron Henry a lot of credit on this defense, because they spent an entire week answering the question, why, what happened in the second half and overtime against Purdue. 43 points were scored in 30 minutes last week against Purdue. They spent a whole week trying to figure out the answer to why. Why did this happen? We didn't suddenly get worse. We had a thread on Illini Guys. That was a fire Aaron Henry thread. You mentioned it in your heat check on Monday about how ridiculous that was. That guy, who Brett Bielema has known since he was 16 years old, went into the lab and figured out how to fix what was going wrong in those last 30 minutes against Purdue. And that defense, I thought, played the most complete game that they've probably played all year, through 60 minutes of football. So give those guys a lot of credit in the amount of a week to understand that we have to put that behind us, and we have to evaluate what happened so that it can never happen again. This is not something that you're seeing like last year, where it's game after game, trend after trend, that this defense isn't getting it. They're getting in the lab and they're fixing it, and they're beating quality opponents like Michigan. And suddenly now this Illinois defense has to be taken seriously, because, Mike, here's the reality of the situation. They have now played 7 football games. They're 6-1. I believe that Illinois' defense has played solid enough to win in 6.5 quarters or 6.5 halves of those football games. They've had one bad half. It was the second half against Purdue. I think they've been solid enough to win every other football game that they've played all year long, and that is a testament to Aaron Henry, Terrence Jamison, and all of those new defensive coaches that Brett Bielema brought in this offseason to get this defense to a point where they are 6-1, and they have national people kind of taking a look at what's going on here, because they are a major piece of why Illinois is in the college football playoff conversation and all of those things. They're a major reason why today Michigan walks away from Champaign trying to figure out why they couldn't put more than 7 points on the board.
Yeah, this was an impressive game offensively. Luke Altmaier was definitely challenged all night by pass rush. He had a decent night considering what he was up against. And I think the statistic that you don't really see is the times that he used his legs to get out of problems that many of a quarterback would have been sacked. And I think that's what you look at. There's 2 types of quarterbacks. Obviously, you've got your running quarterbacks. Milroe from Alabama may be the best running back in the country, but he's playing quarterback. Luke Altmaier is a guy who's very similar. Let's just have fun. Tom Brady. He figures out that little step to evade a defender and then get 5, 6, 10, 12 yards out of a play that should have been a sack. And I think when you look at his numbers within that framework, he had a pretty successful night out there. Like typical Luke Altmaier, he didn't turn the ball over at all, which is critical. We saw how important that was for basically Michigan shot themselves in the foot with turnovers. And that didn't happen with Illinois yet again. And I thought, to be really honest with you, I thought on both sides of the ball, the line of scrimmage was a battle that wasn't one-sided. Michigan has 2 fantastic defensive tackles, but they were held at bay. When Illinois had to actually get things done, they made life hard for them. And there were a couple times in goal line situations where, to be quite frank, Illinois' defensive line dominated the offensive line of Michigan, which I didn't think would be something that you would see. So ultimately, I guess we have a team that's going into what is probably the most challenging game of the year. I think we all felt that from day one going into Oregon. Illinois will be the underdog, but for the rest of the season, Illinois may very well be they may be a favored team. And if they can hold serve, could finish 10-2. And with multiple wins now, 3 wins over top 25 teams, and potentially one loss currently to a top 5 team, and potentially either a win over a top 5 team or another loss to a top 5 team. Illinois, as you wrote in your article, could be a team that has to be looked at 10-2 in the CFP. And that is an amazing amount of progress for this program, considering what it was, even frustrations that people had last year, and more importantly, the disaster that it was when Brett Bielema took over.
This is the Run My Own Business dream. This is the college is paid for dream. This is the retire early dream. This is Busey, where your dreams and possibilities become moments through trusted guidance and expertise, through lifelong relationships. Because we're here to help you achieve the life you've always envisioned.
You know, I'll quote my column that's on IlliniGuys.com, you know, quoting the late, great Prince. Let's get crazy. You know, let's start talking about Illinois and the college football playoff. Because guess what, folks? When they go to Eugene next week, that result's not going to matter. If Illinois comes out of Oregon 6-2, okay, and their losses are Oregon and Penn State, guess what, folks? Illinois is going to be ranked on that next Tuesday night in that first college football rankings on ESPN. Look, that's a made-for-TV thing. It's a pet peeve of mine. But look, Illinois is going to have a number by their name in the college football playoff rankings. And look, here's the deal, Mike. At that point, on the first week of November, if you've got a number by your name, you can get into the 12-team playoff. It's going to be possible. And the fact of the matter is that Illinois could go the whole year where their only 2 losses are to an Oregon and to a Penn State, who right now, both of those teams do not have any losses. And both of those teams seem like shoo-ins for the college football playoff. We're trying to figure out who that 3rd and 4th team in the Big Ten is going to be. Could it be Indiana and Illinois? In 2024, like I said in my column, in a year where Vanderbilt can beat Alabama for the first time in my lifetime, and just Duke can beat Florida State for the first time ever. All of these things are possible. And look, again, this is just another game in which Brett Bielema comes up with a plan that is able to beat one of the bullies of the Big Ten. I keep reemphasizing that because Michigan has just always gotten up on people, and then what have they done? Sit on them, like and make them, you know, say uncle. And Illinois got up on Michigan, flipped the script today, got up on Michigan, sat on them, and made them say uncle. There's people that are going to look at this and go, hey, why didn't Aiden Laughley get more carries? Because he had 54 yards on 9 carries. Because that's what Brett Bielema knows Aiden Laughley does. Those 9 quick hitters are going to be the things that he does well. You don't want to give Aiden Laughley 20 carries because it might result in only like 70 yards. So what's the point? Those plays aren't successful. You want to give a whole lot of carries to somebody, give it to Josh McCray, who had 50 yards on 17 carries. And those are physical, tough tackles for a defense to make. And especially a Michigan defense that, folks, doesn't substitute a whole lot. Like Jimmy Roller had to basically have number 6, the Michigan linebacker, had to have Josh McCray basically plow into him 17 times, right? And so that wears on a defense, and you saw it. And then, Mike, again, I can't emphasize this enough. Robbie Disher noticed something coming into the preparation that said, you know what? We're going to run this fake punt today. Like Michigan, if they give us this look, we're going to run it. And look, this is part of what Brett Bielema talks about when he talks about complementary football. Sometimes, you know, complementary football is about one element of your football team being able to cover up for something else on your football team. Not that they're not playing well, but when an opponent wants to take something away, complementary football says, okay, now that thing that you're letting us do has to be the showcase element of your team. Today, that showcase element of the team was the defensive line, the offensive line, and what Illinois didn't do today, like you said, was put it on their quarterback. And there's going to be games in which you can't always just put it on your quarterback and say, hey, fellas, save us. Hey, Luke Altmaier, bail us out. You can't do what Illinois did last week against Purdue and just say, hey, offense, bail us out because we're just going to keep letting them score. That's not how you play complementary football in the Big Ten each and every week. Luke Altmaier was not going to have 12 great games this year, Mike. This was not one of them, except for the idea that I thought he led the other 10 guys on the field in a way that allowed Illinois to win the football game. Luke Altmaier doesn't walk away tonight, go eat dinner with Chad and Betsy Altmaier, his parents, and say, hey, boy, I really had a crappy game today. Like, he walks away thinking, hey, we just beat Michigan, and that's the kind of locker room that Illinois has. That's the kind of leadership that Illinois has. I also want to point out Matthew Bailey. Matthew Bailey had 11 tackles and was the cause of 2 turnovers today. Matthew Bailey had a terrible game last week against Purdue. His eye discipline was terrible. It was one of the reasons why Purdue had so many big gainers, is that their safeties really had poor eye discipline and really had to reevaluate things. Matthew Bailey is a good football player. And so he comes back today in a game that's more suited to Matthew Bailey, and he has 11 tackles because he knows that this is going to be a game where he has to get into that gap and be basically the converted linebacker of this defense today. He has to be the guy that's going to cause turnovers like he did today. Kudos to Matthew Bailey for rebounding from a subpar performance to be an integral part of why Illinois won this football game today. And again, Dylan Rosiak had to sit there and answer questions from us last week after giving up 43 points in last 30 minutes against Purdue. He has 12 tackles today and was part of the Illinois front that allowed that basically forced Michigan in the fourth quarter to say, Donovan Edwards, you're not beating us. Khalil Mullins, you're not beating us. Jack Tuttle, you're going to have to beat us. And that's not the formula that Sharon Moore or anybody at Michigan would say, hey, that's how we're going to win a football game. And it did not happen today. I just thought the game plan, the preparation, and the motivation of guys that needed to be remotivated after what happened last week against Purdue is so key. And again, that's why everybody's going to have to start figuring out that Brett Bielema knows what he's doing, because at this point now, Mike, he's 22-4-20 at Illinois. And he talked about it today. Thank God he talked about it today, because Mike, you and I have been at odds about this. Brett Bielema addressed Illini football PTSD today. And he said, look, let it go. Like, the past is the past. Let's prepare for the future. And the future is pretty dang bright for Illinois football fans right now, because you have a coach that knows what he's doing and knows how to get you there, and knows how to get you there without being able to go out and get superstars each and every recruiting class. He can get you there right now. And I think that there's a lot of confidence going through the Smith Center right now that on a day where they had more players, more prospects in the stands watching this game, the future is so bright. But I also think that the present is so bright, because if you think about it, as long as that guy is on the sideline for Illinois right now, I think everybody feels like they've got a shot, because they feel like every time we show up in the fall on Saturdays, there's a plan to succeed. And as long as these guys who are good football players, otherwise they wouldn't be at a Big Ten school, follow the plan to succeed like they did today, maybe you won't have spectacular stats like Luke Altmaier, but you'll win. And this is a lot of fun. And again, quoting the late great Prince, like, we're going to get crazy here really, really soon, because Illinois is going to continue after the gaming in Eugene next week. Like you said, Mike, I don't see a way in which Illinois is not favored in each of the last 4 games that they play in November. I just don't see it. So what you're suggesting here is that on the last, if Illinois can do, quoting Bill Belichick, if you can do your job, you can basically say on the last day of the season, after the conference championship games, you're going to watch the selection show to see if Illinois is in there, as one of those last at large bids. And I don't know if on August 1st, people were prepared to think that way about Illinois football. But you know who was prepared to think that way? Everybody that works across the street over here at the Smith Center. And I think that that's a huge, that is just so huge that those guys are seeing things that maybe even fans that have Illini PTSD don't see.
Yeah, I totally agree with that. And I think probably I've had a lot of people, comment that I have something against Ryan Day. I don't have anything against Ryan Day, but I do think that if you have, he's 5-1, and Ohio State's a fantastic football team, but he's got $20 million on his payroll for his players. Brett Bielema's got a 6-1 team with a $3 million payroll. So if you're asking me who I'd rather have as a coach, I'm going to really tell you that, quite honestly, I'd rather have a Brett Bielema. Now, a lot of people may think I'm full of crap, and that is totally fine, because with a $3 million payroll, you're not going to go 60-8. So they give you a little reason why I'm saying what I say. But I'm gonna let Matt wrap it up here, and then I'll finish up on a final part. But this is really a historic win at a game that Illinois could have lost. There were flexion points throughout this game that if Illinois hadn't gotten the turnover, they hadn't done what they needed to do, such as get points. This game could have swung in a different direction. And that, to me, is that development that you see from a coach who knows how to develop players and a staff who knows how to develop players. And to be honest, the biggest thing that Illinois needs right now is donors to keep putting the dollars on the table so that they can make a run at players. Illinois is never going to have the funds that Ohio State has. But you can certainly see that if there was an ability to help this team get a few dollars more, you wonder what they could do with 4 or 5 more difference makers on the team with this staff coaching them.
Yeah, I think this is a big deal. And the reason it's a big deal is because, like I told you guys on the Illini Sports Spectacular earlier this week on our radio show, I have been harping since August 1st that I thought the most important game of the Bielema era was the Kansas game, because it gets everybody beyond the idea that Illinois can't win against a ranked team that's a power conference team coming in here and having a lot of momentum to success. You ended that, all right? Today got you to another tier, quite frankly. Today got you to another tier because you could look at Illinois' schedule right now and go, well, who have you beaten that's really quality? And look, Michigan might end 7-5 this year. They might end something like 8-4, 7-5 this year, but it's Michigan. It's the winged helmet. It's a helmet game. And the fact of the matter is that if you have a wounded Michigan, like you do in 2024, take care of business. And Illinois is properly on the sideline with their coach. And with the talent that they've actually brought in over the last 3 years, they're properly equipped to take care of a wounded Michigan at home, which is exactly what happened today. But this gets you to another tier, Mike. This gets you into a situation in which you go, hey, let's play with house money next week in Eugene. But beyond that, it gets you into a November where you're like, yeah, we can beat Minnesota at home. We should beat Minnesota at home. Illinois is officially in that territory now. We should beat Minnesota at home. We should go to Rutgers and win. We should beat Michigan State at home. We should go to Wrigley Field and take care of business and beat our in-state rival and take the hat back to Champaign. All of those things are shoulds now, not could, but shoulds. And I think that that's what happened today, is that Illinois feels like if we do exactly what there's a lot of people there's a lot of geniuses on our message board that have said this whole season that Brett Bielema's, 3-point plan of how to win football games is total garbage, because Illinois hasn't been running the ball and they haven't been stopping the run and they haven't been doing a whole lot of great things on special teams. Well, newsflash, folks, this was the game plan today against the most, I would say, competitive program that Illinois has seen on their schedule beyond Penn State. And this was the game plan, and Illinois executed it perfectly today. I think the only thing that if you're Illinois, you still got to figure out how to consistently get what you need in the run game. But again, I say that if you'd handed Brett Bielema 187 yards on the ground today against Michigan, he would have been a fool not to take it. And I think he would have thought he'd won the football game, and probably by a pretty good margin. And guess what? Illinois got 187 rushing yards, and they won the football game by a pretty good margin. I think the look, again, this is a wounded Michigan. Maybe they finished 7-5 this year, Mike, but this isn't a fluke. I mean, in my head right now, I'm doing the mental gymnastics right now of this feels like when 2 years ago when Illinois went into Madison and beat Wisconsin 34-10, and everybody was like, whoa, that's the woe feeling today was this isn't a fluke. Illinois dominated the game for the better part of 60 minutes and won a football game. There isn't a whole lot of things that Michigan can go, well, if this had happened and this had happened, it would have been a completely different football game. That's not what Michigan's feeling like on the bus back home today. Like, that's not how they're feeling. They're feeling like Illinois was the better football team for the majority of 60 minutes. And I don't know the last time you felt that way, because you sure didn't feel that way 2 years ago when they played in Ann Arbor. And because that was a really back and forth competitive football game. But this was a one-sided physical beating, and Illinois was the bully. And I don't know the last time I have felt that way about an Illinois-Michigan game. But yeah, you've got a hell of an opportunity in front of you next week, but you've got a hell of an opportunity in the final month of the season now to get yourself in a point where Brett Bielema is going to go on shows during the Big Ten championship week and say, hey, we're 10-2. We deserve to be that 11 seed, or we deserve to be that 10 seed. And he's going to do the campaigning if they get to 10-2. And I think that today's win shows you that Illinois is among the top tier of college football programs in 2024 right now, because they can win in a way that a lot of other teams are afraid to play, which is we will just beat you like with a hammer at the line of scrimmage. And I think Illinois feels like they're capable of doing that. And they showed that today against a team that has only won games today at Michigan, when they take a hammer and they just beat you over the head with it at the line of scrimmage.
Yeah, this was a heck of a game. As I walked around the area tonight, or before the game, in the tailgating and stuff, a lot of people wanted to know, Illini guys, we've heard about you. We've heard your show. We tell you, tune in, go to IlliniGuys.com, hit the radio button, find out what day, Friday or Saturday, and what time we're on any station that's close to you. You can also download the Illini Guys Sports Spectacular as well. And we'd love to have you as a listener. And of course, we have the Eye on the Illini. I'm asking you, please go ahead and share this with people, even despite the fact that my computer took a grievous blow today in the pregame. And of course, if you get the opportunity, IlliniGuys.com really gets you up to date. There's a ton of stuff that we have. You get all the articles early. You get an opportunity to read all sorts of stuff on the Illini teams. But more importantly, we have a message board where we can put on things that might be happening, things that will be happening. If you can't get anybody to kind of vouch for it, it's in the rumor category. You can't publish an article on it, but you can give your folks a tip, your subscribers a tip as to what's going on. It's only 27 cents a day. So way, way, way cheaper than buying a Starbucks coffee. We would love to have you there. We will be back Monday night with a preview of Oregon. Until then, go Illini.